Hi, this is Steve at HeavenlyScience2017.com. One of my friends asked me recently, Steve, how can we know when we're in God's will at any given moment? So I thought that might be something worth addressing as we move ever closer to our Lord's return. I'm out here at a place that we call Cowskin Creek here at the foot of Sugarloaf Mountain, in which I live in the shadow of. It's a creek I used to play in when I was a small child. I believe that we can answer that question from a biblical perspective and put to rest any doubts whatsoever as to the seeming contradiction that exists, that at least appears to exist between God's will and our own human will, or the decisions that we make. My own experience has in many ways been a complete departure from what most of the Lord's children expect of life, but well over 30 years of living and walking with the Lord, in spite of all of life's difficulties, have taught me that the certainty of God's grace and all that ensues from this certainty can be the most saving faith that a man can have. But herein lies the danger, as I see it. To believe otherwise, it's no longer a gospel of the sovereign grace of God that we're proclaiming, but the delusion of the sovereignty of man, who in the final analysis holds the trump card. It's not a gospel of revelation, but a gospel of common sense, void of the absolute undeniable fact that it is God who is supremely sovereign, not ourselves, when we speak of the final outcome of all things. Such a faulty human perspective of things places the outcome of events squarely in the hands of man, not God. As soon as we begin to say God and man becomes increasingly important as a decision maker, and God decreasingly so. In due time, God is reduced almost to the position of assistant or even bystander. The battle becomes not the Lord's, but man's. And when the world comes in like a flood to overwhelm the church, as Hitler's world did, man finds himself alone in his weakness, and he's no longer able to meet the challenge. And I'd venture to say that despite our comfortable lives here in the West, we are living in very trying times as we draw ever more near to our Lord's return. My desire for my followers is that they stand firmly in God's sovereign will in their lives, because they cannot, will not ever be able to thwart His sovereign will and control of our lives, no matter how much they believe that they can do so. Romans 8:28 tells us that all things work together for the good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. We're also told in Philippians 2:13, for it is God who is at work in you, both the will and to work of His good pleasure. I think most of us would agree that the outcomes of our brief lives here on earth are determined by the decisions that we make, but that it would be a mistake to believe that the decisions that we as believers make can somehow override God's sovereign will being accomplished in the lives of His people as He promised. So how do we reconcile the two realities that on the surface appear to be contrary to one another? Do we as Christians really have the final say about how our lives turn out? In other words, does human will really have the ability to trump God's sovereign will in our lives? Or is God's will truly sovereign? I think it's safe to say that this is an issue that has been debated since the beginning of time. In order to arrive at the truth of this matter, I think we have to ask ourselves the following question. Does God's sovereign will in the lives of His people cease to function whenever we do something that is obviously contrary to His revealed will for our lives. I submit to you that it does not. Because no matter what decision we make in our lives, it is God's will that trumps human will, not the other way around. This is the way I see the two wills in the life of the believer, working in perfect harmony despite our seeming successes or failures. I believe God's sovereign will is like this stream flowing in one direction. Nothing can alter the direction of that current. Nothing whatsoever can change the course of God's sovereign will in our lives. It flows in one direction and one direction only. That which is in accordance with His good will and pleasure. I've lived my life as a believer based upon this unchanging principle. Yet I also am quite well aware of the fact that many of the decisions I've made in my life have not been consistent with the will of God as revealed in His Word. So how can I reconcile the two? If I can't change the direction of the current in the stream we're looking at, what am I to say about all the wrong decisions that I may make in life that would appear to alter the direction of that stream? I've become persuaded that the word appear is where we get hung up in our thinking about this. Note the sediment along the banks of this creek. The dirt, the sand, the twigs, the rocks, everything that borders along both sides of this creek. I imagine all of these things to be the decisions that we make in our lives. The point being, they get caught up in the current of the stream, but they in no way alter the direction of this current. And so it is with the decisions that we make in our lives. Whether they be right or wrong, God works all things together for the good to those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. This is why Philippians 2:12 tells us to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God at work in us both to will and do according to His pleasure. The truth is that in the lives of His people, He promises to do just that, which gives us reason to show serious reverence for His sovereign will in our lives, which is flowing in one direction to its final end. So we must be careful what we throw into it. For despite the fact that our decisions can't alter the direction of the stream's flow, it does become part of it. So I hope you found this video encouraging. If so, please click like, share, and subscribe. I love you guys. And until next time, this is Steve. Thanks for watching.